Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Hey, look at all these cool people popping up on camera and everything. We're so lucky. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn program. My name is Callie Bain. I am the Community Engagement Strategist over at CultureWorks. And I'm also joined this morning by my other CultureWorks team members, Mary Burris, our Advancement and Grant Strategist, Daniel Jones, our Tri-City Program Manager, and Scott Garka, who is listed as the CultureWorks name on the screen here. For anyone who might be unfamiliar with CultureWorks, we are a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening artists and arts and culture organizations in Richmond to strengthen their impact in our region. That impact being social, economic, etc., community impact. We achieve this through a number of different offerings we have. Most notably, we have an annual grants program that we get dozens and dozens of applications for every year to support artists and arts and culture organizations to support their diverse initiatives. And we also have our non-grants programming, such as this monthly Lunch and Learn. Oh, I'm sorry, Monica. This monthly Lunch and Learn and a quarterly networking mixer. And coming up in a couple weeks is Artober VA, which is our month-long celebration of arts and culture in the region. I'd like to share a couple of exciting things we have going on. We've been working hard over here, getting Artober together. You all are invited on Tuesday, October 1st to our Artober VA kickoff block party. It's going to be here at our office space at 1906 North Hamilton. And we're going to have music by Sweet Potatoes, which if you guys have never heard Sweet Potatoes, they are truly a treat. Tacos from TBTL Gallo, scoops from Gelati Celesti, beer and wine from Garden Grove Brewery. I'm really excited. I hope I get some time to enjoy this party I have planned. It's going to be a really good time. You're invited. Please come out and just enjoy the community and help us kick off Artober. We also have a Pay What You Will event series. So we have about over 2 dozen local arts and culture organizations who have agreed to host the Pay What You Will event, class, workshop, day of admission at Pay What You Will pricing. So that enables the audience member to name their price of admission, hopefully fostering accessibility, inclusivity, and getting everybody to be able to come out and experience arts and culture at a price within their means. So some of the participating organizations we have, Virginia Opera, Richmond Symphony, the VMFA, the Valentine, Richmond Triangle Players. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. Viz Arts, come and take a class at Pay What You Will admission. Cultural Arts Center, take a class, Pay What You Will admission. It's all really, really exciting. So go to artoberva.com and take a peek at all those opportunities that we have throughout the month. And then lastly, we don't have a lunch and learn planned for next month because instead we are doing very similar an open doors virtual series on access and arts and culture. So beginning on Tuesday, October 8th, and then every Tuesday after that throughout the month of October, we have a lot of exciting arts and culture leaders coming on to speak about access as it relates to their field in arts and culture. So you can go to artoberva.com to see if all this word jumble just went right over your head. No worries, we got it all listed out there on our website. We're really, really excited about everything we have going on, and I hope that you all are able to take advantage. So enough about all of that. We're here to hear and have a conversation with Nathaniel Shaw. And if you see me glancing over here a little bit, it's because I'm looking at my notes. Nathaniel Shaw is the producing artistic director of the Firehouse Theatre. He was the founding artistic director for the New Theatre and the Active Theatre in New York, and served as artistic director for Virginia Repertory Theatre. He was the inaugural new play development director for Glass Half Full Productions, Tony and Olivier award-winning producers of Betrayal, and was an associate choreographer for Once, supervising both the Broadway production and the first national tour. Richmond directing credits include the world premiere of Memories of Overdevelopment by Caridad Svich, probably butchering that. The US premiere of The Barber of Moville, which was a Richmond Theatre Community Circle Award winner for Outstanding Original Work. Peter and the Starcatcher, it's amazing. The world premiere of The End of War, the winner of 4 RTCC Awards. The world premiere of River Ditty in collaboration with Glass Half Full Productions. In the Heights, starring Arielle Jacobs with choreography by Karla Garcia, winner of 5 RTC Awards, including Best Direction. West Side Story, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, The 39 Steps, and Once, co-produced with the Fulton Theatre. New York directing credits include Touch at 59E59, starring Tony Award winner Katrina Lenk, wow, and the first New York City revival of The Violet Hour. Richmond Style magazine featured Nathaniel in both their Power List Arts and Culture and among Richmond's top 40 under 40. He is a graduate of the University of Northern Colorado and a member of the Stage Directors and Choreographers Society and Actors Equity Association. And with all of those incredible credits, we are certainly very, very fortunate to have him on our program today to chat with us. So, hey, Nathaniel.
Hey, I didn't know you were going to read all of that, but thanks. It's firstly, just thank you, CultureWorks, for gathering people in this way to talk about the arts in our community. And you never know when something's going to spark that one of us can kind of take forward and make things a little bit better in our corner of service. And then thank you, all of you who chose to come hang out with us for an hour at lunch. And as far as I'm concerned, please treat it as lunch. If you need to eat your lunch, don't hesitate.
So. I've got my lunch box over
Good.
Here. Good. And I forgot to mention that. Great, everyone, to have your snack if you have your lunch.
I didn't get a receipt.
Come by and get your nourishment. And I already see we got Mr. Q, howdy all. I want to encourage everyone, if you have any questions throughout the way or comments, affirmations, feel free to pop it in the chat. You know, I have some questions here that I've prepared for Nathaniel, some things I'm curious about, but we all care about shaping this conversation around who's in the room and what would be beneficial for you all to know and what you all are curious to know. So certainly, I am going to be keeping an eye on the chat. I have my own questions over here, but get involved in the conversation because this is for you too. And also know that the meeting is being recorded. So if you miss anything, we'll put it up on YouTube later and you can go back and see that. Nathaniel, I asked this question of Bill Martin last month at our Lunch and Learn, and I was really tickled by all of the answers we got. So I'm wondering, and I'm wondering this of everyone else too, put your answer in the chat. Of all Richmond restaurant dishes that you've had since your time here, from restaurants that are still with us or no longer, what has been your favorite dish? And I'll put mine in the chat too.
I was fearful of this question because I'm not somebody who's like getting out and trying all the coolest hip restaurants and like deeply in the food scene the way we're supposed to be as Richmonders, because we have this emerging food scene that people are so excited about. But the place I would like to plug is Taza Kitchen. So firstly, that comes because I know their owners, Susan Davenport and John Davenport, really, really well. They are incredibly supportive of the arts. So, you know, if they're doing well, their contributions to the arts are doing well, and I think that's valuable. And then I always find when I go to Taza, I get a really delicious meal. I don't feel like I had to take out an additional loan to get that a really delicious meal. I don't feel like I've eaten a bunch of food that's bad for me, and I enjoy what I eat. They have a sausage and like sweet honey, spicy sausage and like sweet honey pizza that's really, really good. So I love Taza, good food, good people, and that's my spot.
Sorry to catch you off guard with this address.
No, it's all good. I just feel like I should have some really hip or cool answer, and I definitely don't.
Please. Everybody has their favorites. So tell us a little bit about
Scott are on the same
for
page.
anyone who might be unfamiliar with your organization and what you all are doing over there, or perhaps have kind of heard of Firehouse from years ago, but aren't so familiar with where it stands today.
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you all. There's so many wonderful thought leaders and artists and people who lift up this arts community on this call, and just really, really grateful to hang out for this hour together. Firehouse, I think it's fair to say, for 30 years has been Richmond, Virginia's leader when it comes to producing thought-provoking content. Many other theaters have sort of come and gone and ebbed and flowed and carried some of that burden along with Firehouse, but for 30 years, it's been a constant. Carol Pearsall and her wonderful gang founded this organization in 1993. It is indeed in a firehouse, so appropriately named. And they were taking on, you know, the kind of leading literature of the day when it wasn't so hip and trendy to produce the leading literature of the day in 1993. Carol led the organization for its first 20 years, as many on this call know. There was kind of a complicated split between her and the board after those 2 decades. And then eventually Dr. Joel Basson found his way to the producing artistic director seat and did a wonderful job, I think, of stabilizing the reputation of the organization, you know, getting it on solid financial footing, opening the doors more broadly to independent artists and other organizations as well. And he brought in an even more experimental kind of style and history when he came to the organization. He was ready to retire come the summer of 22 when I directed that production of Barber of Moville here, which was the first thing I ever did at Firehouse. And during that process said, hey, I feel like I'm getting ready to step away. When I look around our existing theater community, given your commitment to new plays and the history that you have at Virginia Rep and working at other organizations outside of Richmond, you feel like a logical fit for Firehouse in relation to its next chapter of leadership. And that immediately turned into a conversation about merging the organization with the new theater that I had started following my departure from Virginia Rep. And Firehouse then agreed to adopt the vision and core commitments of the new theater, and we agreed to a set of sort of strategic priorities that the new theater side felt important to continue forward and not just have things swallowed up and lost by the larger organization through merger. And what's been so exciting is that when I look back now to what was January of 23 through now September of 24, everything, what I'm so proud of in relation to our team and our growing board, every single thing that we said we were going to prioritize in those initial strategic commitments, everything we have set ourselves as tasks to do and in advancing the organization, we are doing every single one of those things in some degree, in some ways in really, really significant ways, in other ways in sort of planning phases and whatnot. But everything we said we were going to do when we brought these two organizations together is in process in some way, shape, or form, which is exciting. With the new theater came an elevated commitment to new plays. So we are now really prioritizing the work of finding wonderful ideas and finding wonderful artists, meeting them at inception or very early in the life of the play, and figuring out how we use existing programs or create new paths for those plays to be thoughtfully developed in consistent collaboration through the difficult process of developing a new play until they're premiered, and hopefully now trying to find bridges for work beyond their premiere in Richmond. That's one of the things since we closed the world premiere of Romana Clef that I've been working quite hard on. I've been reaching out to theaters all across the country trying to find that next step for Chandler Hubbard's wonderful play. So it is about meeting things at inception, and walking that long and hard and joyous road alongside a play, having its premiere and then trying to find a bridge for it out into the industry.
I know that the new theater, was committed to producing new plays. That was its whole mission. And now that it's kind of merged with Firehouse, we're seeing that, like you're saying, come to fruition with a really, really remarkable last season of work. I am biased because I am a theater lover, but it was truly wonderful and some really wonderful new works in your season. I'm wondering where that passion is for you, the way you speak about producing new work is just clearly very informed. Why is that so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the lifeblood, right? I mean, it's if we don't, and I'm just sort of mean the collective we as theater makers, if we only produce the work that has already been developed by others and proven and tested in major markets, and that's the only thing that we're willing to produce, then I don't know that we are giving that much back to the canon of American theater and to the art form that nourishes us. So I think, and I think it's so important that today's stories are told. Yesterday, and I'm using yesterday to capture a long period of history or American history, or however you want to say it, somebody else collaborated with a playwright, put in those hours and that blood, sweat, and tears, and brought yesterday's plays to life. So yesterday is reflected in what we would think of as the canon. Sadly, what we've seen in an accelerated way since the pandemic especially, but even prior to that, less and less investment was going into new plays. We've lost some really important incubators of new plays, like the Lark Theater in New York. Humana pulled their funding from their festival at Actors Theater of Louisville, and many, many other organizations in the post-pandemic landscape have had to sort of shrink their budgets, which has put a squeeze on especially the new play development effort. So I think if we want our stories to be told today, if we want the voices of today to be elevated and amplified and have the material that could come out of right now nourished, some organizations, some artists have to commit to that work. So I think it's important for a lot of reasons. And I think it became ever more vivid, obvious to many for a long time, but ever more clear in 2020 that the canon of plays that I grew up appreciating is sort of horrifically imbalanced towards white and predominantly white male playwrights. If when I was entering college, people would have asked me who are the great playwrights, or even when I was leaving college, right? I would have, said Tennessee Williams, Eugene O'Neill, William Shakespeare. I would have said all of those names. And so I think increasingly so, as we move forward with this, we have to be thinking about how do we who serve in this particular way, how do we help so that the future canon of mainstream American theater is more reflective of the entirety of the American experience. And if Firehouse can play a small role in that, and I can someday retire if we ever get to retire from this work, and feel like I have done something that contributes to that effort, I think I'll retire a happy man, and I will feel like Firehouse is contributing in a meaningful way.
Can you speak a little bit to, I feel like you've shared a lot about from a leadership perspective, from a change-making perspective, why producing new work is so important. But from an artistic standpoint, can you share a little bit about, I don't know, the differences between getting to produce, working with Chandler Hubbard on Romaniclef, that new work, and getting to develop and create, that production versus creating a production of Buried Child like you did last season, a classic work?
Yeah. Well, there are wonderful experiences to be had with artists in either model. Many of you know I just directed a production of Peter and the Starcatcher here. It was my second time visiting that piece. And it's a joy, and it has a wonderful spirit about inventiveness and allows the director and the cast to kind of come up with a version of the play that is unique to that production. But on a personal and creative level, there's sort of nothing more satisfying or thrilling than being in the throes of the daily discovery of making something new. In doing a Peter and the Starcatcher, while yes, there are differences in our production that are unique to our production, there are differences in this production than even from the last time I did it. But the template is there, the model is there. A lot of really smart people gathered around that play for a long time, massaged that script for years. I know one of the lead producers on that, and he said, Nathaniel, it took us 10 years to make it, from the time we started out to adapt this novel to the time it opened on Broadway. It was 10 years of really smart, really talented people working together to make it a thing. Even if I took some adventures in the physical storytelling of that, it still comes from a movement vocabulary that is from Stephen Hoggett, who's the original movement director of that, who I also worked with on once on Broadway. But so that physical theater making style was sort of embedded in the piece already. When you are doing a Memories of Overdevelopment, which is the Caridad Svich play I had the pleasure of premiering last season, or when you're doing Chandler Hubbard's Romaniclef, there is no blueprint. There is no previous production. There aren't a whole small army of theater makers who have worked out all of the kinks before you. There isn't proof in the pudding as a producer that it's going to sell. You know, it's all unknown. It's all unknown. And how invigorating and exciting it is, for me at least, to do everything I can to help ensure that what's in the playwright's mind is sort of being unlocked through the collaborative process of making theater with designers, then with actors, and the necessary part of bringing that theater in front of people for that reciprocation between audience and artist that is necessary to kind of complete the loop. So I think it's just so much more thrilling and satisfying, and the endeavor, you know, Peter and the Starcatcher, I might have put a few months in on. I put about 2.5 years in on Romaniclef, and I wasn't even the director of it. And I'm still invested in it now, trying to find a future home for it. So that relationship between organization and artist and playwright is deeper, and that bond is more meaningful. And something like, I won't, you know, I'll get off this topic, but something like Caridad Svich's play, you know, she gave us nothing in regards to how it was meant to be produced. She said it could be a play, it could be a movie, or both. And that's all you know. And so all of that projection design that the remarkable Tennessee Dixon created, the original music that Kate Stadelman composed for the piece, none of that is there. There's no suggestion of a score. There's no suggestion of what those projections should be. And so all of it is generative. We're generating the whole thing. Obviously, Caridad's really the generative artist, but that team is creating from scratch and really creating from nothing, and creating with an absolutely open template, which is scary in a way. You know, you're standing on the precipice and like ready to jump, but it's scary sort of not to have a blueprint under you, but it's also incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I received a question from one of our participants. And I also just want to take this moment as a moment to say, if anybody else has any questions or this brings up any thoughts from anyone, Don't hesitate to put it in the chat. Like I said, we want to ensure that we're shaping this conversation around who's in the room and what you all care to discuss. But they said a significant percentage of people do not attend live theater. It appears to be irrelevant. How is Firehouse expanding its audience?
There is the forever challenge, right? I think the theater has been dying since its inception, hasn't it? It is a larger challenge post-pandemic than I think we've ever seen before. We are in kind of regular dialogue about that. We have some good people working on that. One of the things that came over in the merger with the new theater was we had kind of these core set of values of we want the art form, and one of them is we want the art form and our organization to be as accessible and welcoming to the diverse communities of Richmond as it can be. But it's really easy to put something like that on a piece of paper or on a website and not actually do anything. We've been gathering a little group of people to kind of talk about what that looks like. And I don't want to claim to have any brilliant solutions here. I think this is one of the things that is really challenging for all organizations, is how do we create both a more diverse and younger audience, and how do we sort of battle against what appears to be a shrinking interest in participation, especially post-pandemic. I would say things at Firehouse are definitely trending upwards right now. Our ticket sales are definitely moving in the right direction, and they did kind of throughout the course of last season, and memberships and sales so far this season are trending in a positive direction. You were talking about pay what you will at the beginning. I think it's important that we try to make it as accessible as possible in regards to price. We all have some numbers that we have to meet as organizations to kind of keep the doors open and keep doing the good work that we're doing. But I also don't think I certainly don't want the theater, and I think most of us don't want arts and culture to be inaccessible to people based on price. So for us, all of our previews and all of our matinees, except the closing performance, are pay what you will. Lisette Cross, who's the executive director of Diversity Richmond, is on our board, and she just encouraged that we add a pay it forward price, where those that are able to could choose to pay it forward and pay more than the ticketed price, so that they are sort of subsidizing others' abilities to take advantage of the pay what you will, and leaving the organization in good standing. We're talking about adding the ability, sort of taking inspiration from the founding of the Barber Theatre way back when, allowing that pay what you will to also be a canned food donation, or allowing that pay what you will to be a clothing donation. And we're going to try to implement some partnerships with other organizations in our community that do meaningful work in those areas, so that people could attend a Firehouse show with canned food and we get it to Feed More or some other organization that serves the community, as a way to come see the theater. So we definitely want it to be accessible in relation to price. We have student discounts, we have military discounts as well. So all of that is important to us. And then I think we are in what I would consider sort of the early stages of trying to build out a better network of partnership relationships. So how can we build authentic and meaningful partnership relationships with other organizations, performing arts and otherwise, to shine good work on what they're doing in the community, and have them shine a little light on what we're doing in the community. And I say we're in the early stages because it's not sort of something we're consistently implementing, but we're trying to have a community partner on each piece, and ideally also a corporate sponsor. But the community partner is what I'm more interested in. So for instance, Peter and the Starcatcher, we work with child savers that have been helping families and children in particular for 100 years now through traumatic circumstances, and that's sort of thematically related to the story of these orphans, one of which becomes Peter Pan. And Water by the Spoonful, we're doing the Virginia premiere of that in November. And that play in part centers around a crack cocaine addiction recovery talk group. And we're going to work with the McShin Foundation, which is devoted to addiction recovery and provides housing for people in need during their recovery. So we're going to partner with them and make sure the dialogue around the play and the work we do on the stage actually reflects that experience, and we can shine a light on them and they can shine a little light on us. So I think building out our network of partnerships, in addition to trying to make the art form as accessible as possible from a price perspective, are the things that Firehouse is kind of actively doing.
Right. You talk a lot about community and wanting to build out your relationships with not just, you know, citizens, but also these organizations. I'm sure a lot of people on this call know that you came to Richmond to take a job with a theater here. And when that job ended, you decided to stick around and stay and start the new theater, which now merged with the Firehouse, and you're doing all this wonderful work that you just shared about. I'm wondering what it is about Richmond that attracts you, and you know, why you decided to stick around and continue cultivating art here.
Yeah, I mean, I have fallen in love with Richmond, as I'm sure many of you either were in love with it for a long time or grew to love it. So I wouldn't say I arrived on day one and said, oh my God, this is my forever home. I just love it here so much. But as I've worked more and more in the arts community and with the artists who make Richmond so vibrant, I have fallen more and more deeply in love with it. And I think one of the allures of Richmond, and one of the challenges too for like so many of us who are on this call to work together on, is it always feels on the cusp of something. You know, I felt this at Virginia Rep in a different way because of its kind of size and place in the industry, but that nobody outside of Richmond had really ever even heard of it. It felt like it was on the cusp of becoming a really, really good theater. And now I feel it at Firehouse. It feels like there's always this potential of an even greater excellence than we are achieving with our current means. And that's really alluring and really exciting and really interesting to try to like be a part of. And like, how do we unlock that? How do we get from a good theater community to a great theater community? What are those things? So resources, financial resources or other resources aren't the only answers to that. But I think that's one of the areas where I think of the theater leaders and arts funders and philanthropists, that's the kind of leadership that I think is necessary to push us from good to great. Because I think we can be great. And I think there are many instances where, and I'm really just speaking about like theater production. I think there are many instances where Richmond elevates and demonstrates its greatness and fulfills and realizes that potential. But I do think we are sort of inconsistent in that. And I think a lot of that is resources. And I think a lot of that is the ability for these organizations that are struggling to make ends meet to produce at a high caliber time in and time out. It is the inability, and that extends then to the artist, right? That is me saying, I can't pay you enough to do the deeply vulnerable, highly committed work that I need you to do, right? And so it's sort of a systemic challenge, I think, that we face as a community. And I don't know all of the inputs that causes this challenge, and I don't know all of the solutions by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the collective people, the collective body who leads, participates in, and cares deeply that there be an excellent theater community in Richmond, we need to increase investment. And that can mean a lot of things, and that can mean a very different thing to everyone. But what is it that everyone who cares deeply that there be meaningful theater in Richmond, what is the investment you can make? How can you bring somebody else to it? What can I do in the position I have as the sole executive at Firehouse to sort of increase investment in my organization? What can I do with the modest infrastructure that we have to support other organizations, which I think we're doing in a meaningful way through our residency model? What are all the things that we can collectively do to say the potential is dynamic and beautiful and vibrant, and there is an excellence we have not yet realized because we haven't collectively convinced the community to be invested in the way that they need to be. So that's an odd answer to your question of why do you stay in Richmond? Because it's the potential. It's chasing that unrealized excellence, I think, that I find so exciting. And why I think Firehouse is such an exciting thing, because it has this ridiculously cool 30-year history of doing the edgiest stuff in town. And Carol was a champion of this kind of work for 30 years. And now I kind of get to pick up the torch she carried for a moment and carry that forward. And then you get in here and you're like, oh, if I give this remarkable production team a little bit of resources to build a set, look what they can do. Oh my God, the potential is insane, right? But it's under-resourced, and either circumstantially or by choice or by design or by lack of effort or a whole lot of things that we can all lament. But the thrill, the potential is what I think makes Richmond feel so exciting.
Yeah, you're touching on a lot of things that,
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place.
don't apologize.
Too much coffee.
Please don't apologize. It's great. I'm in it. But I was going to say, you're bringing up a lot of things that, over at CultureWorks, we encounter with having conversations with not just theater artists, but artists in general. And I would love to take this opportunity to share with everyone that in partnership with All City Art Club, we are hosting a mayoral forum on Tuesday, October 8th at 6:30 at Virginia Repertory Theatre. These conversations you're bringing up about, how do we resource? You are certainly not alone. Firehouse is certainly not alone. There are artists and organization leaders who share similar concerns. Especially in the wake of Richmond getting these designations recently, right? We got Best Street Art, USA Today. We got #1 place to travel on CNN Travel. And we've heard from several community members and several of our artists say, that's great, but where is, that support? CultureWorks actually did a really interesting study in collaboration with the National Endowments for the Arts, looking into, how much impact do arts and culture have on an economic level in our region? So I pulled some numbers just to give people some context about what arts and culture. We're making these lists. Not only is it great quality art, but it's a great economic driver too. In Virginia, arts and culture is an $18.8 billion industry, which is 3.1% of the state economy, and supports 112,723 jobs, which is bigger than transportation, education, and agriculture. And specifically in Richmond City, organizations and audiences spent a total of $329.9 million in 2022. And that relates to, all the kinds of, beyond what the organizations are spending to produce their art. Audiences, when you go see a show, when you go to a gallery, you're buying dinner, you might buy a new outfit, all these different things that go into it. So we see a big impact that arts and culture have, not just, how one might be impacted personally by art, but also it's a huge economic driver. And certainly there are lots of conversations ongoing about how the city, how, other sources can help provide support.
I think that's all really great. And I think what we have to do as like arts leaders and arts advocates is take that and then figure out how we translate that into actual dollars and cents for the artist, right? So I did some digging on some numbers and studies and then of course like left that notebook at home trying to get out the door this morning. So I feel like I don't have the tool I wanted, but there was a study a couple of years ago that was like ranking where states fall in the artist's ability and the artist's economy, right? And Virginia was something like 41st or 43rd or something like that for an artist to make a meaningful living, right? So I think how that's got to change, or our artists are going to continue to run away to other markets or leave the industry at some point, right? If you can't make a life as an artist, or if a very, very small percentage of us are lucky enough to kind of do that, then how are we going to ever kind of capitalize on that economy that you're thinking? How are we going to get from good to great, right? So I think that's, we are trying to, and it's still so modest, it's still such a small number, but when I came over in the merger with the new theater, we immediately moved artist compensation. We increased artist compensation 300% when I came to Firehouse. And anyone who probably worked at Firehouse last season is like, that was 300%? I was like, yeah, that was 300%. So it was so unreasonable, but not unreasonable based on the size of the organization, but just like impossible for us to say, you have to devote the next 8 weeks of your life, 20 plus hours a week, plus all the extra work you do to memorize the lines, and then pour your heart and soul into this very, very vulnerable work for $600. That's kind of what it looked like, right? It's just like crazy. And we're not alone. All the small to mid-sized arts organizations, theater organizations, are sort of in relative scale to one another here. But it's just obscene what we're asking artists to do. The blood, sweat, and tears they have to pour into something for the compensation we're offering. And I blame in part the organizations, right? Because we're making financial choices all the time about how to use those dollars and cents. But the bigger issue is that the organizations are so underfunded. There's no aspect of funding, whether it's individual contributions, corporate support, certainly that's largely been redirected to other causes, grants, NEA money. None of it has kept up with the rate of inflation. And I'm talking about sort of in my lifetime. I'm not talking about these last couple of years of inflation. I'm talking about in my lifetime. So none of the funding sources have kept up with the rate of inflation, so of course these arts organizations are strapped, right? So it's a big puzzle. It's a big puzzle, and it needs to be unlocked, or Virginia and other places that aren't New York and LA are just going to continue to have a brain drain of artistic talent until we can start to make it reasonable to choose Richmond as home and be compensated for the brilliant work that you do.
Yeah. I want to ask this one little question about something you said, but then I also want to respect all the people who have input little things. So really quickly, we're talking a lot about funding, money talk. that's important. But you did mention that, you know, there are ways that we can uplift, especially these small to medium-sized arts and culture organizations beyond funding. What do you know, in your humble opinion, from your perspective where you sit, what are some of those things that the community or arts and culture leaders can do?
Yeah. Well, I think as a community member, it's participate and encourage others' participation. I think that's the biggest thing, right? If you say in your heart, it is so important to me that there is a theater like Firehouse doing new work in Richmond, and for 365 days, you don't participate in any way, whether that is through your attendance or whether that's through a donation, or whether that's through forwarding our social media posts or whatever it is, right? Then I would question whether or not it really means something to you that there is a New Works Theater in Richmond, Virginia. And then I think it's kind of cliche to say, but there is no social media campaign that we can do. There's no marketing dollars that we can spend, at least not at the level that we can spend it, that is going to inspire others to participate more than you all, and I mean the collective you all, encouraging them to participate, right? So if something is deeply meaningful to you, and I'm just picking a New Works Theater in your community, if it's deeply meaningful to you, participate and encourage others to participate. I think most of us, not everyone certainly, most of us have some capacity to make a contribution, a financial contribution, either through a ticket purchase and or through a donation. I don't feel like I have a lot of money. I've got 2 kids. We're very, Lisa and I are struggling to get by, but I have enough that I can make a small donation. If everybody who says they care that there is a New Works Theater in Richmond, Virginia, made the small donation that they are able to make, it would make a really meaningful difference. If everybody who claimed to care that there's a New Works Theater in Richmond, Virginia, encouraged another person to attend that New Works Theater, it would make a difference. Many of us may not have personal resources, but we have others in our lives who have financial resources. So I think it's that. I think there is many ways to be invested, because I don't think of myself as somebody who has a lot of extra financial means to contribute to things, but I have a little bit. And then I have the ability to communicate with others and share with others and invite people along. There's a theater, it's sort of a theater. It's sort of a social activist group. I believe it's in Minneapolis, but I could be getting that wrong, called The Jar. And they have a whole convener model, and their whole model is about others bringing people to experience the work, right? So there are so many ways you can engage with an arts organization and support what they do through your own ticket purchase, encouraging others, bringing people with you, donating what you can, encouraging others to donate what you can. Because again, it comes back to resources and network and relationships and the breadth and depth of those resources, human and otherwise.
I have 3-ish questions over here in my chat. And we have 8 minutes.
All right.
So we're going to try our best. And thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Nathaniel, for all your insights. This has been a really, really rich conversation. So someone asked, what have you found helpful in that generative process when you're creating something new?
Like new work. What have I found helpful? I think one of the 2 parts, I think, just as a first knee-jerk reaction to this question. One, initially being very open to possibility. Don't assume at the beginning you know what the thing wants to be. I think especially when I receive a new play from a playwright, you might think sort of immediately, oh, I immediately know the 36 ways I can fix this play and make it work, right? But then I think we are limiting a whole suite of things that are beyond our initial reaction to a project. So I think initially it is being very open to possibility. And then I think whether it's sort of scheduled or whether it's intuitive, knowing when it is time to then tighten the screws and become clear about what it is trying to become. So I think when I'm meeting a project at the very beginning, whether again it's directing a scripted piece or meeting a new play at inception, be really, really wide open to what's possible. And then whomever it is, playwright and director combined or dramaturg, whoever's in that process, kind of having either a sixth sense for or a calendared scheduled moment where you know it has to tighten and sharpen and become clear in what it's trying to communicate.
Great. Ash asked, with Firehouse existing in a historic space, can you talk a little bit about the balance between maintaining historic elements in addition to creating a robust, almost experimental art space?
That's a great question. Firehouse is not historically designated in that way. We haven't, past boards have not yet pursued that particular thing. So we don't have those restrictions necessarily. However, I do think there is a really rich history there. And architecturally, I think if we ever lost those double firehouse doors that face Broad Street, or if that fire pole that is there upon entrance ever went away, it would be a loss for the organization. And certainly we've now, added the Carol Pearsall stage. We dedicated the stage to Carol. So that history is now sort of in the space. Her legacy is in the space in some way. And we worked closely with her family and Fifth Wall Theatre and others to make that possible, and added a founder's plaque so that those people were not forgotten now or in the future. So I do think I think that an institution needs to honor, cherish, recognize and correct perhaps if some of the history is not what it should be, but really know its history and be strengthened by it and know the story and know why it is and know how it became and a little bit about those people and who they were to undergird the decisions that the leadership, the board, and kind of by extension, the community have to make about the organization moving forward. So I think if there's a total lack of awareness, whether it's physical in the space itself or in the history and DNA of what made it what it is, if the decision making is not undergirded by those things, then I think a lot of institutional mistakes can be made very quickly and in ignorance. So I think it's really important that as you chart a course that is forward thinking and accelerated and running confidently towards a bright future, that you're doing it with the knowledge of where the institution came from, both physically and in the people and its role and place in the community.
Nathaniel, thank you so much for talking with us today. I feel like this just went really well, personally, if I may say so. And thanks to all of you for all your great questions. I know there were some little other tidbits of questions throughout here, and I apologize for not being able to get to all of them. I really encourage you all, as we continue this conversation about supporting arts in our community and coming up with some solutions to that. Attend this mayoral forum, get involved, let your voice be heard. There's a question submission box when you register for the event. Nathaniel, is there anything you'd like to plug? I know you are, when's the next play? November? You have your resident.
Yeah, so Cadence Theater Company's with us. They're one of our residents. They open True West this weekend. I can't believe it. It should be a fantastic production. It's kind of 4 years in the making, I think. They were going to do this and then got shut down by the pandemic. It's the same two actors at the core of it, same director. So that's a really wonderful thing that it's finally coming to fruition here. Anna Johnson, the Cadence founder, is also a Firehouse founder. So wonderful to bring her and her organization back under this roof. And then we follow that up with Water by the Spoonful in November. But mostly I just want to express my gratitude to CultureWorks for the important work you do in the community. And as I look around at the faces on this call, so many of you are really critical to the arts ecosystem, the arts and culture ecosystem. And I'm honored to be a part of that with each and every one of you. And I'm grateful for the work you do. And appreciate all of your hard work in trying to, if you feel similarly to me, help Richmond become not just not only as excellent as it is, but as great as it can become. And that is sort of an ecosystem thing, right? That is everybody who gets a chance to participate in it, feeling supported in their work. So just gratitude. And also all of you know that the door's open here at Firehouse in relation to thinking about ways we can work together to advance arts in this community. So thank you.
I love that, an ecosystem. Thank you all so much for joining us. Stay up to date with other programming we have coming up throughout the next month at octoberba.com. Nathaniel, thank you. Everyone else, thank you. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.